Sacred Sites with Steve Ray, here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
We're not going to go up north in Michigan today. I want to take you up north in Israel today. And so last week we left Mount of Beatitudes. We had Mass at the Mount of Beatitudes. And if anybody ever says to me, I'm getting a little dizzy up here on the mountain, are we high in elevation? I'll tell them, no, you are still 80 feet below sea level. While you're on the top of the Mount of Beatitudes, you're 80 feet below sea level. It's one of the lowest summits of a mountain or a hill in the world. So the Sea of Galilee is 650 feet below sea level. But I'll leave there and we're heading north and we're going to get up into the real mountains. And it's up in Mount Hermon, and that is 9,000 feet above sea level, and that's a real mountain. That when that's covered with snow most of the time. Even sometimes from our hotel in Galilee, we can see the snow on the mountains up there. Jesus saw that snow. He was well aware of that snow, and he was up that in the north. He may have even got his feet wet or cold in the snow. Who knows? But anyway, we're up at Mount Hermon. As we're coming up the north, we see this mountain. It's called Mount Hermon in the Bible, mentioned many times. It's also called Sirion and Mount Sinar, 9,000 feet above sea level. And then it's basically the border between Lebanon and Syria and Israel. But because of the chaos over there lately, Israel has moved north and kind of taken over the summit and the other side as a buffer zone against Syria and Hezbollah in the north. And sometimes when we're driving up there, you can always see the antennas and things from Hezbollah. And you heard about them in the news recently, but so we're going to skip that. But Mount Hermon, in Psalm 88, it says, the north and the south, and you created them, O Lord, Tabor and Hermon. Tabor is the Mount of Transfiguration, which we just celebrated. We're going to go there in a couple of weeks, I should say. But it mentions Mount Hermon, and it says that those two mountains, Tabor and Hermon, are sacred mountains, and they joyously praise your name. The mountains are praising God. Psalm 133, behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. It's like the dew that falls down from Mount Hermon all the way to the mountains of Jerusalem. So this is, in Israel, you can go skiing on the top of Mount Hermon and 3 hours later go scuba diving in the sea, the Aqaba, Gulf of Aqaba and the Red Sea. It's really an interesting country. You can do just about anything there. So anyway, it's covered with snow most of the time, and you could tell in Israel if the Sea of Galilee is going to be full or low based on how much snow is up on Mount Hermon. Because as that snow melts, it comes down into the Jordan River, and then it fills up the Sea of Galilee. So it's kind of a predictor as to how much water is going to be. Sometimes the Sea of Galilee is very, very low, and then sometimes it rises. It's fun. We've seen a 20 feet difference in the times that we've gone here and there, back and forth over the last 30 years. But we're coming now around the curves, and we arrive at Banias. Now, if you look at a map, it says Banias, Banias, and it's right on the border with Lebanon. In fact, as we're driving along, we see the electric fence that's between Israel and Lebanon, and there's yellow signs that say, warning, landmines. I have one of those signs hanging up in my garage at home. I found it when we were up there. It was laying on the ground. It had blown off the fence. I jumped out and I grabbed it and I brought it home, and they stopped me at the airport and asked me what this was. I said, it's a sign. Why do you have it? Because it's very cool, and I want to take it home and hang it up on my wall. So anybody that comes there, I can show them the landmine sign from Syria hanging up on my wall. But it's because during the wars with Syria in the past, the Syrians put landmines there. So you don't get out of the bus and start walking across the field. There's a fence there, and it's all safe as long as you stay where you're supposed to. And but it's always a great matter of conversation with the groups on the bus. But as we come around the corner we see Banias. Now, I'm going to just describe that name because we're pulled in. And you look in the Bible, you never see Banias. And you look in ancient history, you don't see the name Banias. In the biblical times, it's called Caesarea Philippi because it was a part of the province north, and it was owned by Caesar Philip, one of King Herod the Great's sons. That was his territory, and he was building it into a big capital city. So the archaeology there, you could see a lot. But it was in existence long before the Romans came because it was a pagan worship site. And the reason it's called Banias is because originally, before Caesarea Philippi, it was called Banias, Panaeas. That's the god Pan. And up there's a huge niche carved in the wall. I'm going to go all through and describe the geography of it because it tells us about the papacy. That's why Jesus went up there. He didn't go up there just to take a hike. He went up there for the backdrop. He was a master teacher, and he always looked for backdrops that he could use to illustrate what he's saying. So Banias was the city of Pan, and people came up there to worship the god Pan. He's like the man's head and the goat's back end, and he chases girls through the woods. And that's where from the word Pan, we get pandemonium, we get the word panic. All of those words come from this god Pan, who had his niche. That's where they came, all from the whole Middle East. They came to worship him there, which is why Jesus went up there, by the way, because do you remember what Pan was the god of? He's the god of nature and other things, but he's mainly the god of sheep and shepherds. And I hope that a lot of people, it's going ding, 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 ding right now, because Jesus took them up to the shrine of the god of sheep and shepherds. And who is he? He's the chief shepherd. And what's he doing? He's appointing his new shepherd. And so this is so significant, but I'm getting ahead of the story. And now the Arabs, because it's been Arab, a lot of the language in the cities, a lot of them are named after with Arab words. They do not have the P sound in their alphabet. There's no P in Arabic. So when they say Papa, when the Pope was there, they couldn't say Papa. They said Baba, because they, instead of making a P sound, they make a B sound. So Banias became Banias. That's why if you look on a map, it's Banias because of the Arab inability to pronounce the P sound. So it's Banias. So we pull in there and we have to stop, and it's not a holy site. This is not one of the holy sites I'm going to take you. So it's not a sacred site. It was sacred to the pagans when they came there to worship Pan and all the other pagan deities. And they came there to worship Herod, which we'll get to. But it is to me, it's a sacred site because it's where Jesus appointed Peter, and he went up there for that purpose. So while we're sitting there, it's a national park is what it really is. So usually when we pull in, there's buses everywhere, and there's a bunch of Muslim school kids going on a day around the park, and then there's Jewish students going on a park, and there's families having picnics. And one day, Governor Huckabee, who's now the ambassador, he was there with 8 buses. So all of our group wanted to say hello to Governor Huckabee, and he was very gracious and said hello to all of our group, and they all ran over there, Governor Huckabee, and so it was kind of fun. 8 buses, can you imagine that? That's 400 people. That's way too much to take at one time. I like one bus. One bus is nice because you can talk on the bus, and when we're driving, for example, it's been an hour from Beatitudes up to where we're at now. The priest tells their vocation stories. We explain all that they're seeing, the African-Syrian rift. We're explaining Mount Hermon. So if you have too many buses, it's not as good. So we try to keep it smaller. By the way, we're going in December, and we have one bus over the Christmas break. Anybody that wants to go with us. So we come in, and while the guide is getting the tickets, I'm explaining to them. I said, now look straight ahead of you. This is the best view you're going to have. There's the rock. See the huge rock? It's like 500 feet long and 50 feet high or so. And right in the center on the left, there is a big cave. It's a big cave in the side of this rock. And it's the foothills of Mount Hermon. So we're coming right up. You could go right up into Mount Hermon from there. It's the foothills. So you see a huge cave there. And in the there used to be a temple in front of the cave, temple to the divine Caesar Augustus. And then there's niches where the gods were set. These were niches that have been there for over 2,500 years, where they put gods, and they came and they worshiped these idols, and there's still the Greek letters carved in. And I'm almost out of time. But this is where the pagans used to come to worship Pan, but also they built a temple, Herod did, to the divine Caesar Augustus, and they also came up there to worship Caesar. But guess what? We're going up there because Jesus used this as a backdrop to explain who he is and what the papacy is, and we'll have to wait till next week, and I'll give you my quick talk next week, and I'd run out of time today.
Sacred Sites with Steve Ray is heard live every Monday on the Guadalupe Radio Network program Morning Joy, hosted by Keith Downey. For more authentic Catholic content, go to grnonline.com/joy.